everybody, Randy Kertz here for Bass Musician. So we had talked the previous couple of months about different ways to approach different instruments based on their size, neck width, etc., etc. So I'd like to talk about a multi-string this month, and I have a 5-string in this case. Obviously, a lot of players are playing 5-string and 6-string instruments. A lot of the things that we talked about with the P bass last month and the neck being thicker and the diameter being greater or less, and they vary, certainly come into play. Not only do you have a thicker neck, but you have to make your fingers conform to a smaller space in this case, depending on the string spacing. The string spacing on a 5-string is generally going to vary from instrument to instrument, but there's certainly a learning curve involved there as you're trying to play things that you may have learned on a 4-string, or just trying to put more music into a smaller space, so to speak. So we are talking about the thickness of the neck, and we had talked about a way to approach by putting the thumb in the back of the neck and then moving the neck around, the wrist around accordingly to play from top to bottom. And that really is very important with a when I say multi, I'm talking about a 5 or a 6 or even more, in this case, multi-stringed bass guitar. So what happens is, what I find is when you approach at the top, like we've been talking about regularly, one thing is that the instrument is even more likely to cause cramping here in this thumb and in this part right here, and also at the wrist at that level, simply because when you grab it there, now you have even more space, and again, you need to play, you've got an extra string at least in that space, so you need to be able to navigate that, and your muscles are going to have to work to differentiate that space and to make those smaller, finer movements in order to do that. So again, it's about making that thumb move, but now because you've got more space that you need to cover, a lot of times the elbow will come out a little bit too. If the hand remains rigid, that elbow coming out will give one a false sense of security, meaning that you'll feel like there's less pressure here because that lever is going out like so, meaning your elbow and your arm. But what's really happening is you're still doing the same amount of work here, and this area is still cramped. So better to, again, really sort of exaggerate the movement of the thumb and the wrist going up and down when you're playing from top to bottom, but also helps to keep the instrument maybe a little closer to the body. So in this case, the instrument, I like to kind of maybe bring it in a little bit and approach it like that. So I have the bass up a little higher than I would normally have it. Maybe down like this is where I would normally have it. I find having it a little higher like that lets me get to the notes and the places I want to go a little easier without really cramping up that hand or that wrist. And a lot of this, the proof is in the pudding, so to speak. Meaning if you play and it hurts, maybe you want to take a look at it and see if you're doing it in a way that is against these principles we're talking about and is cramping you up and causing you to have pain, and maybe you want to change it a little bit. If you're not having pain and it seems to be working for you, and your hand size and everything else, then you're probably doing pretty good, and you just want to monitor it and make sure it stays that way. The stuff that I'm talking about, it helps or it doesn't. So hopefully it is helping and pointing you in the right direction. The other thing is that we talked about the shoulder going up and down. Doesn't need to do that. We want to navigate the fretboard in such a way that we're able to move freely and not have to bring in other muscle groups if we don't have to. I'm aware too that a lot of players play the instrument lower than I do, or they play the 5-string and they have it lower, and that's going to put even more of a strain on the wrist when they're playing, especially if they're kind of chugging along through rhythms or chords or things like that too. So another thing to keep in mind, when you have the instrument lower, you're going to have even more of an angle there and possibly a detrimental situation. Again, as we go up towards the bridge, we start to see that what happens is with the wrist, it seems to be easier to play because it almost becomes level here, and we're able to keep everything together in one place, and we don't have to stretch or contort our hands in one direction or the other. So Randy Kertz with the multi-string, meaning 5 or 6-string bass this month, talking about ways to avoid discomfort. Always available at drkertz at drkertz.com. My website, www.drkertz.com, where you can get my book, The Bassist Guide to Injury Management, Prevention, and Better Health, and available as a physical or an ebook. Also Skype lessons available as well. Lessons more to the idea of how can you play in such a way as to avoid discomfort and keep playing for a longer and more enjoyable time. So, signing off. See you next month. Randy Kertz. So long.